Look in the mirror right now. Look at your nose. Not at how it looks. Look at its shape, the bridge, the angle, the width of the nostrils. Because scientists have now proven something that changes the way we understand facial features entirely. Your nose was not shaped by chance. It was not simply inherited from your parents in some random genetic lottery. The shape of your nose was forged by thousands of years of survival in one of the harshest environments on Earth. And if you have a certain type of nose, a high narrow bridge, straight defined profile, narrow nostrils, you may be carrying the physical signature of Viking ancestry in the very center of your face. The nose is one of the most powerful windows into your ancestry that exists on the human face. Unlike eye color or hair color, which can appear randomly across many different ethnic groups, nose shape follows specific genetic patterns that are deeply tied to where your ancestors came from and the climate they survived in for thousands of years. In 2017, researchers at Penn State University published a landmark study in PLOS Genetics, one of the most respected peer-reviewed scientific journals in the world. They 3D scanned the faces of over 10,000 people and measured 7 specific nose shape traits across populations from 4 different climate regions of the world. What they found was extraordinary. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what your nose shape is telling you about the people who came before you and whether the blood of the Norse runs through your veins. So what exactly is the Viking nose? And do you have one? The Norse, or Nordic nose, has several very specific characteristics that distinguish it from other nose shapes. Understanding each one will help you identify whether you carry this ancestral trait. The first and most defining feature is a high, narrow bridge. The nasal bridge, the bony upper portion of your nose, between your eyes, sits high. It creates a straight, defined line from the forehead to the tip of the nose, without any significant curve or bump. When you look at a Norse nose in profile, it is almost perfectly straight. The second feature is narrow nostrils. The width of the nostrils, the openings at the base of the nose, is significantly narrower than what you would see in people from warmer climate ancestry. The nostril openings are closer together and more vertically oriented, rather than wide and flared. The third feature is moderate projection. The Norse nose projects outward from the face with confidence. It is not flat against the face, nor excessively large. It has a strong presence that balances with the prominent cheekbones and jawline that typically accompany Norse facial features. And the fourth feature, the one most people overlook, is thin nasal skin. The skin over the nose is fine and close to the bone and cartilage beneath it. You can often see the subtle contours of the nasal structure through the skin, giving the nose a refined, sculpted appearance. Pause this video right now. Look in a mirror or take a photo in profile. Do you see a high, straight bridge, narrow nostrils, a nose that projects confidently from your face? Because if you do, what I am about to tell you is going to explain exactly why. Here is where it gets genuinely fascinating. For over a century, scientists debated whether nose shape differences between human populations were simply random, the result of genetic drift over thousands of years, or whether something more deliberate was happening. In 2017, that debate was settled. The Penn State study 3D scanned the noses of over 10,000 people from 4 completely different population groups and climates. They measured 7 separate nose shape characteristics, and they found something that proved natural selection, survival of the fittest, had directly shaped the human nose. Nostril width and the width of the nasal base had evolved faster across populations than could be explained by random genetic drift alone. Something was driving these changes, something deliberate, something environmental. The conclusion was clear. Narrower noses evolved in cold, dry climates. Wider noses evolved in warm, humid climates. The reason is elegant in its simplicity. The nose is your body's air conditioning system. Before air reaches your lungs, it must be warmed and humidified to protect the delicate respiratory tissue inside. A narrow nasal passage forces the air to travel more slowly and contact more of the warm, moist nasal lining before reaching the throat. In freezing Scandinavian winters, where temperatures can plummet to -20 or 30 degrees, this is not a cosmetic feature. It is a survival mechanism. Wide nostrils would allow a flood of freezing Arctic air to rush unfiltered into the respiratory tract, causing damage and increasing risk of infection. The Norse people, whose narrower noses could better condition that freezing air, survived. Their children inherited those noses. Their children's children inherited them. Generation after generation, that nose shape was selected for and strengthened until eventually it reached you. But here is the part nobody talks about. Because the science of where this nose shape actually came from goes back far further than the Viking Age. And the answer involves something that will completely change how you see your own face. The Vikings did not create this nose shape. They inherited it. When modern humans first migrated out of Africa into Europe and Western Asia, approximately 40 to 50,000 years ago, they encountered something, a different species already living there. Neanderthals, people who had spent hundreds of thousands of years adapting to the brutal cold of European Ice Age winters. There was interbreeding between modern humans and Neanderthals. Scientists have confirmed this through ancient DNA analysis. And those Neanderthal genes, including genes related to cold climate adaptation, were passed forward into the populations that would eventually become the Norse. Neanderthals had notably large nasal structures, broad and prominent, adapted over hundreds of thousands of years to the harshest cold climates the European continent had ever seen. When their genes mixed with those of early modern humans moving into Europe, those cold climate adaptations came with them. The world's largest DNA study of Viking skeletons, published in the journal Nature in 2020 and led by Professor Eske Willerslev of Cambridge University, confirmed that the genetic history of Scandinavia was shaped by waves of migration and genetic mixing, stretching back thousands of years before the Viking Age even began. The Norse were not a pure, isolated people. They were the product of tens of thousands of years of human migration, survival, adaptation, and inheritance. And their nose, your nose perhaps, is one of the most visible physical records of that entire journey. Think about that for a moment. When you look at the bridge of your nose in the mirror, that straight, high, defined line, you may be looking at a feature that has been passed down through an unbroken chain of ancestors stretching back before the Vikings, before the Bronze Age, before agriculture, all the way back to the first modern humans who survived a prehistoric European winter and passed their cold-adapted genes forward to you. Drop a comment right now. Do you have the high, narrow Viking nose? Look in the mirror and tell me what you see. I read every single comment on this channel. Now here is where it gets personal for you specifically. A nose shape is a powerful indicator of Norse ancestry, but it is not confirmation on its own. Facial features can appear across many different populations due to the complex history of human migration across Europe. If you want to know definitively whether you carry Scandinavian or Norse genetic ancestry, and whether you carry any of the specific genetic variants associated with cold climate adaptation that the Viking people inherited, the only way to find out is through an Ancestry DNA test. Modern Ancestry DNA tests have become remarkably sophisticated. They can now break down not just your broad Northern European ancestry, but identify specific Scandinavian regional groups, Norwegian coastal communities, Swedish inland populations, Danish Viking-era lineages. They can show you the migration routes your ancestors took across prehistoric Europe. And some leading tests will now show you your Neanderthal DNA variant count, the specific ancient genetic variants you carry that trace back to that prehistoric interbreeding event between modern humans and Neanderthals in Ice Age Europe. If you have watched this video and felt that recognition, looked at your own nose, and felt something click into place, I have linked the Ancestry DNA test I would recommend in the description below. It will show you your Scandinavian percentage, your broader Northern European ancestry breakdown, your migration routes across ancient Europe, and your Neanderthal variant count. The link is in the description, and using it supports this channel at no extra cost to you. Before we close, I want to give you the complete picture, because the nose does not exist in isolation. It is part of a cluster of features that tend to appear together in people of Norse and Northern European ancestry. If you have the high, narrow, bridged nose we have been discussing, look also for these accompanying features. High, prominent cheekbones. Viking skeletal remains consistently show elevated cheekbone structure, a feature that may have evolved to provide better insulation and protection for facial tissue in freezing temperatures. Deep-set, almond-shaped eyes. The Scandinavian eye shape features deep-set eyes with slightly upturned outer corners. This configuration is thought to have evolved to protect the eyes from wind-driven snow and to enhance peripheral vision on open, frozen landscapes. A strong, defined jawline. Norse skeletal analysis shows a robust jaw structure, balanced and symmetrical, that complements the straight nose and high cheekbones into a distinctive facial profile. A broad forehead, particularly common in women of Norse ancestry. A wide, high forehead was considered a mark of beauty and strength in the Viking Age, and remains genetically linked to Northern European populations today. The more of these features you recognize in yourself, especially in combination with that high, narrow nose, the stronger the case for Norse ancestry embedded in your facial structure. Somewhere in your ancestral line, centuries back, perhaps thousands of years back, a person stood on the coast of Scandinavia, breathing freezing Arctic air through the same nose shape you see in your mirror today. They survived winters that would break most people. They sailed open seas in wooden ships. They built civilizations and crossed oceans. And when they did, they carried their genes with them, into Scotland, into Ireland, into England, into France, into the Americas, into every corner of the world their descendants eventually reached. Your nose is not just a feature, it is a record. Every generation that survived a northern winter and passed this shape forward to the next. Every ancestor who breathed that freezing air through a narrow passage that warmed it just enough to keep them alive. Every person in your bloodline, from the first Norse settlers all the way to the first modern humans who survived Ice Age Europe. That is what you are carrying in the center of your face. If this video made you look at yourself differently, if it made something click, subscribe to this channel. We go deep into Viking ancestry, genetic traits, and what your DNA is really telling you about who you are and where you come from. New videos every week. Drop a comment below. Do you have the Viking nose? Have you had a DNA test that confirmed Scandinavian ancestry? I read every single comment and I reply to as many as I can. The link to the Ancestry DNA test is in the description, and I will see you in the next one.